first story we're going to talk about is the story of a man named Granger Taylor. Now, I first came across this story because it was considered an alien abduction story. Here's two of the headlines of the articles we're going to be talking about. Alien abduction? Unsolved case of man who disappeared after building UFO reopened. It's pretty evocative. Another headline, the man who went to space and disappeared. So this story's been going on for a while. This was it wasn't a super well-known common UFO abduction story, but I had heard of it quite a while back. Not necessarily when it happened, but I heard about it in the 90s. So it's not completely obscure. People were wondering about this. But let's go ahead and just get into the story here. Okay, so there was a man named Granger Taylor. We're in the year 1980. We haven't busted this out for a while. Let's take the Carpenter copter. So, you gotta check the oil. Let's get out. There it goes. Get back in. Pneumatic fuel. This might take a while. So, while we're gonna have to hire a maintenance crew to come out and fix the Carpenter copter. But even though we're on a deadline and I gotta get a bunch of episodes done, we do get the Carpenter copter finally flying. And we're flying from Hood River, Oregon to Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Sometimes the city of Vancouver gets flooded in a circle, and Vancouver becomes Vancouver Island. Little known fact, I bet you didn't know that. Vancouver Island, British Columbia. We're flying overhead, and we can look down from the helicopter, and we see a UFO on the ground. We're like, awesome, dude, UFOs. Yeah, technically, it's not a UFO if it's landed, right? Then it's just a ULO, an unidentified landed object. But anyway, so we land next to it. We find out it's not a UFO. It is a tree fort that an adult built, but no tree. It's just a fort then. It's a fort that an adult built in someone's backyard. I believe it was his parents' backyard, but it is shaped like a UFO. He built it himself. Now, Granger Taylor was considered a fairly gifted child when it came to things like engineering and design and things like that. He was kind of a do-it-yourselfer, and he built this big UFO-shaped house in the backyard. Again, he's an adult, but, every adult has kind of odd hobbies. It's not a big deal. I do think it's weird that he was living in it, but he just really, really, really liked UFOs. So he would tell people about alien abduction experiences, but he wanted to be abducted by aliens. He really liked the thought of being abducted by aliens. So that's the thing. Like, most people are scared of alien abductions. It would be people may go, well, he just wants to be abducted. He wants to meet some little gray people. But here's the thing. Really, we say abduction. It's kidnapping. Now, if you knew someone who was like, you know what I really want? I really want to be abducted by, like, the Russian mob. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Like, you would think they either had a death wish or they had a fetish. But when people talk about they want to be abducted by aliens, people are like, oh yeah, mysticism, maybe you'll learn some stuff from the aliens. It's the same thing. You're basically being kidnapped and you probably won't come back. So he would talk about being abducted by aliens all the time. He really wanted it to happen. And then one day, he disappears. So I know I'm being a little flippant towards this story, and you might think it's disrespectful at the end, but there's a reason why. So Granger Taylor disappears, and nobody knows what happens to him. And the way it was always reported in UFO media was, maybe he was abducted by aliens. Maybe the aliens were communicating with him and wanting him, and they knew he wanted to be abducted, and he disappeared. Hence the titles of the two articles that I chose, and most of the articles have headlines like that. Now, he said, a friend of Granger said that aliens talk to him telepathically, and you're like, okay, aliens are talking to him telepathically. He has this bond with them. Again, if I'm getting phone calls from the Russian mob every day, and I'm telling my friends, oh my God, you won't believe who called me yesterday. It was Vladimir. He's going to kidnap me this week. You'd be really, really concerned. But the friend was like, yeah, he said he was talking to aliens telepathically. So at that point, you can say, well, he's talking to aliens telepathically. I believe in UFOs. Maybe that's true. And then you could say, well, he got abducted. He lived in a UFO-shaped house. He wanted to be abducted. He was talking to aliens telepathically. That could be true. This is where we start to get into the actual reality of things. Aliens may or may not be true, but this is where the rubber hits the road. And this is where, at any point, people are going, maybe he was abducted by aliens. I'm glad Yogi Bear is a guest star on this episode. Hey, boo-boo, he wanted to get abducted by some aliens, I guess. This is where every article should have been like, he probably didn't get abducted by aliens. One, his sister said, oh yeah, no, he talked about talking to aliens. He really wanted to get abducted. He also took acid every single day. And not just every single day, a few times a day. So he's dropping huge amounts of acid. And that's when you go, oh, okay, then now the story's getting a little bizarre. He also, when he magically disappeared and got abducted by the aliens, he left a goodbye note and 2 wills. So now, when I read the first article, I was like, it sounds more like a suicide. And, you could be like, oh, that's insensitive. Maybe he really did get abducted by aliens and he wanted to leave these notes. This was his note. It's kind of heartbreaking. Note, Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship, as reoccurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe. Then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger. So, again, if you're getting a note like that, and he's dropping acid all the time, a few times a day, you're going to be a little concerned. But people for years were like, he just floated away. He just floated away. Now, like I said, I had heard this story, I think, in the 90s. And they left out a key detail. Because a lot of times that'll happen. You take the evidence you want. You're like, oh, I believe in aliens. Or, I believe in aliens. And I'm not going to do that voice anymore. I believe in aliens. And this guy said he was talking to aliens. And he disappeared. Case closed. There is another key development in this story. In 1986, they find his truck and a bunch of bones. But the truck was blown up and his bones were all over the forest. He borrowed some dynamite from his parents and blew himself up. Now, there are people who say maybe the explosion was an accident because he actually knew how to handle dynamite. But that actually makes it less of an accident. So what it seems, and we'll cover this plays in another story we're going to cover. Very famous UFO encounter kind of has the same feeling. It kind of seems like he really wanted to be abducted by aliens. I think the good version of the story is he wanted to be abducted by aliens. He was driving on his way to the alien abduction point, and dynamite accidentally went off, blowing up his car and himself. The bad version of this story is he was dropping so much acid and so delusional that the aliens may have said, you need to blow yourself up to join us. You need to straight heaven gate yourself. You need to ascend to the alien spaceship, you need to leave your body. So drive to the middle of nowhere and blow yourself up and your spirit will go into our spaceship or whatever nonsense. And he did it on purpose. But it's weird because that's the complete story. Like, you can't leave off the dynamite part. And even in articles where they mention it, it's kind of like, oh, well, they did find some bones in his car and a dynamite blast. But no, that's the end. It sounds like he got kind of in over his head with some delusional behavior. His friends didn't intercede. Weren't like, well, maybe you're not, maybe if you think aliens are going to take you, maybe you should leave the dynamite at home. Because that's really where we see stuff like Heaven's Gate, where the cult were like, oh, there's UFO coming, but to join it, you got to drink this poison. Sad story, and I know that's the thing, like, it started off really flippant, but it's more, I'm being more flippant towards the way the story was handled, and is still handled today. The headline should not be, The Man Who Went to Space and Disappeared, or Unsolved Case of Man Who Disappeared After Building UFO Reopened. He blew up. That's the answer. And it was just kind of dealt with like, oh, maybe he did get abducted by aliens. No, he blew up. The end. So you have to admit stories, like, even if they fit your narrative, you sometimes have to take them and discard them and go, oh, that guy didn't get abducted by aliens. He got abducted by the combined force of dynamite and gravity. Sorry, Granger. And again, that might sound flippant, but we have to be realistic with this stuff because the subject is already so unrealistic. Anyway, and this is going to pop up a few more times of people who quote-unquote mysteriously vanished, and then we find out afterwards that it was most likely they didn't get abducted by aliens. And one of them is a very famous alien abduction story, by the way. We'll get to that, though, in a future episode. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.